Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're the League of Women Voters Charter Review Task Force. My name is Marla Jamaid. We also have Darcy Dumont here and Janet. Janet, say your last name for me so I don't mangle it.
Potash.
Potash. I didn't want to mangle it, and I know that I have before. And we are expecting our fourth member, Julian Hines, will be joining us shortly. This is the second in a series of public discussions that we're holding about the Amherst Home Rule Charter and the potential for some amendments to it based on the League's good government principles. Darcy, if we can see the next slide, please. This is just some background about the task force. In 2022, at the LWVA's annual meeting, members voted to conduct a review of the Amherst Home Rule Charter in relation to the good government principles. The move was made in anticipation of the town required review in 2024. And that was when the LWVA task force was created. In 2022 and 2023, the task force conducted a resident survey, which was guided by the LWVA principles, and published the results. Those are available on the League's website. The task force survey concluded that many respondents are not fully satisfied with how Amherst government is functioning. It also found that among the 13 towns that used Amherst's form of government, which is city council and town manager, it is common to amend or change home rule charters by using an array of processes that are established under state law. This slide is about the charter's periodic review requirement, which is in fact embedded in the charter itself. It states the town council shall provide in every year ending in a 4 for review of the charter by a special committee to be established by the town council. And then that committee shall file a report within 1 year recommending any changes which it deems necessary. These are the League's good government principles: widespread and inclusive participation, diversity in the community reflected in government, openness and full disclosure, checks and balances of power among the executive, legislative, and administrative branches of government and the electorate, honesty and non-corruptibility in all decision-making, efficiency based on professional management and timely decision-making, and accountability for political and fiscal decisions. This slide is about Massachusetts law and the pathways that towns and cities use to change their charters. There is what's called the Home Rule Amendment to the Massachusetts Constitution, and there is the Home Rule Procedures Act, which set out these different pathways. Changes to the legislative body, including terms of office and modes of election, need to be proposed by an elected charter commission. Other amendments can be proposed by a 2/3 vote of a city council, followed by public hearings and submission of the intended change to the Attorney General's office and the voters. A community can also adopt, revise, or amend a charter by a special act of the state legislature with the governor's approval. And
Oops, sorry.
Whoops. And so the task force current efforts and next steps: we're studying the charter articles and finding resources about municipal government and best practices. We met with and are receiving comments from original charter commission members. We met with and are receiving comments from sitting and former town council members. We're going to observe the town's charter review process and update the League Steering Committee on developments. And we're collecting data to make recommendations to the LWVA membership about whether specific amendments or revisions are warranted based on the good government principles. So this is the second of 3 discussion sessions. Our next will be on Sunday, May 5th. As you can see, today we're going to be talking about the position of the town manager, incorporation of power, and elections in the town of Amherst. And we will be holding a consensus meeting for league members on June 2nd from 2 to 4 p.m. to hear recommendations from our task force and to determine whether there will be amendments, whether we will recommend amendments to the charter, and details to that meeting will be forthcoming on the LWVA's website. So Darcy, should I proceed with this slide or?
I believe this is Janet.
Okay, Janet.
Okay, so the first question that we are considering in today's meeting is, should the powers and duties of the town manager be limited or delineated more clearly? Next slide. So the relevant charter sections are pretty long, so we didn't include all of the text. Section 3.2 has executive and administrative powers and duties of the town manager. There are 24 sections in this clause, covering probably more than 24 areas. Section 3.3 concerns the powers of appointment, and that covers 4 different areas. And Section 3.4, powers of suspension and removal of, I think, town employees. So, rationale for a possible amendment. The league principles involved include checks and balances, accountability, and openness and full disclosure. So the town manager is an appointed rather than elected position under the charter, and the town managers who serve, it's only been one since the charter was adopted, are not directly accountable to the voters. Instead, any attempt by the public to influence the town manager's decisions or actions must take place through an elected intermediary body, the town council. In the absence of very clear delineation of the town manager's role, and despite the 24 areas, they are fairly broad, this form of government can lend itself to an accumulation of power by the manager's office, including the potential for greater influence over policies than the charter may have envisaged. So in practice, the town manager's significant influence is seen in several areas, including the budget process and powers of appointment. The manager has the power to set budget and budget policies and has initiated certain practices in the absence of explicit town council direction, which the town council will then agrees to by not objecting. The town manager's allocation of staff is not always aligned with the council goals as adopted. So among these examples, a per resident staffing policy, which sets staffing for the town at half of the state average, dissolution, perhaps deprioritization of waste reduction staff and the resident committee, delayed construction and maintenance practices, prioritization of grant applications according to the administrator and his staff's priorities, a committee and board appointment transparency, less resident participation on committees, and there have been some staff retention issues. So, best practices. In a 2004 analysis of when decision-making powers should be given to public directly, as opposed to accountable officials, or to non-accountable officials, Harvard University economics professor Eric Maskin and researcher Jean Tirole concluded that technical decisions, in particular, may be best allocated to appointed bureaucrats. But the most important decisions should be made by elected rather than non-accountable officials, and the discretion of non-accountable officials should be more limited than that of accountable ones. So those are guidelines. And we've come to the end of the first question, and we are actually way ahead of time. So yes, fire away, and I will refuse to answer.
So if any of our attendees would like to make comments on this area or have questions, although we don't have all the answers, this is the time to ask them. And Julian, you're keeping time, right?
Yep. We're doing 15 minutes per section and I believe 3 minutes per attendee.
Right. And
we're 1 minute into this section. It's allotted time.
So maybe 10 minutes instead of 15 minutes. If we have any comments.
My hand is raised.
I see an iPad that has raised
Yeah,
their
that's
hand with
me.
no screen.
Hi, Julian. Claire. I was just trying to remember when we had our select board, did they then approve a position like police chief and fire chief, or was it only the town manager? And right now, do the counselors have voting ability if the town manager appoints a police chief and a fire chief? Do they have a veto power?
I think they have approval.
Approval, that's the word. So they can't turn it down, or
well, yes, they can. I mean, they. Oh, okay. I mean, it's the town manager who manages the recruitment and the vetting process, and I believe brings his recommended candidate to the town council, and they do have to approve it. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Because I was just trying to remember what the past practice was and if there's much of a change or not. But thank you.
I'm pretty sure the select board also approved those sort of things.
Well, I know, but I thought they might have had more power of approval.
Yeah.
Prior. I was just trying to think. Again, the relationship between those two, the board and the manager, the council and the manager. But thank you.
Good question. Martha?
Hi. Yes, I wanted to speak a little bit specifically to this point on the police chief. As you probably know, I'm on our league's racial justice committee. And so we had actually talked with our town manager last spring and stressing the importance of making the process of selecting the police chief, open and transparent. And they did have listening sessions to get input for what qualities people wanted in the new police chief and so on. And then they did have, a committee made up of town residents to review the candidates. And they had the listening sessions then last week, or no, not listening sessions, question and answer sessions with each of the two final candidates last week. And I think it is an open statement here. I think I've heard it from two sources that the committee of residents interviewed at least 5 candidates, and they were going to choose who to recommend and put forward to the town manager among the 5. And then 3 of the 5 candidates resigned, withdrew their applications sort of toward the last minute. And that's why it was down to just the 2. And they did have the open question and answer session and solicited comments. But now I talked with Angela Mills just a few days ago about the process from here. And of course, Paul Bachman's been on leave for a couple of weeks, but when he comes back, then it won't be too long before he makes his decision among the 2 candidates that have been put forward. And then it goes to the town council for approval. And so at that time, that is an opportunity for residents of Amherst to voice their opinions to the town council. And the town council can either say yes or no then on whichever candidate Paul Bachman puts forward. I don't know what happens next if the town does not approve the candidate, but that is the process, that it does have to be approved by the town council.
As I recall, there was some discussion during the Charter Commission about how much approval would be, which appointments had to be specifically approved by the town council, and so they're not involved in the actual vetting of the candidates, but they are involved in they do have the final say.
Right. And I know in some cases for some appointments that the town manager makes, there isn't even a citizens committee that, that reviews the candidates. But for both the CREST director and for the new police chief, at least they did have, a committee made up of residents, of course, chosen by the town manager, but I think he at least tried to be relatively representative in these cases. So that's the extent of what I know about those.
Great. It looks like your hand's still raised, iPad, but I don't know. Nope. Okay. Other people have questions about this before I wrap it up?
I could comment again here. I mean, I have seen.
Are we, Darcy, is that good?
Excuse me.
As long as we have, we have about 4 more minutes, I think,
Yeah.
right?
So I'll restart your time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I certainly have seen my experience over the past couple of years. I was on the solar bylaw working group, and I've certainly seen that how town employees use a lot of discretion in making decisions that are, really behind the scenes, and not very transparent. Partly it's because they're overworked and they have to set their own priorities, but it certainly is true that there is kind of a, a lack of transparency, I would say, and part of it is reaction, I think, to times when, everybody in Amherst has gotten up in arms about something or other. And so town employees tend to feel negative about, participation from the public because there have been occasional issues where it gets so very controversial. But I do certainly see that that's a problem. I don't have an obvious solution, but I can see that it's a problem. Maybe somebody else has some thoughts.
Yeah, Josana, you have your hand up, so go right ahead.
Hi, Josna here. I'm mostly just listening because I haven't yet reread the charter carefully, but I really appreciate your having listed or summarized the areas where the town manager has made decisions or taken on a strong role in the last few years. And I really do feel strongly that we should ask for or propose clearer delineations of the limits of his areas of power, because I did read recently that it was that there was some talk of his powers being extended and expanded, and so I feel that now would be the time to get more precise about the limits of them. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. And my apologies for mispronouncing your name.
Not at all.
Next slide, I guess.
Well, this is the end. I would say that we did originally express that question as to whether the power should be expanded, and then we decided we really didn't need to ask that.
So, Julian, you have the next question.
Great. So I will be both timekeeper and speaker for this.
Yeah, I can keep time.
Okay, sure. No, I'm happy to as well. But our question here is, should resident committee applications be submitted to the town manager? Should they be considered public records or open to public view? So, on Charter Section 3.3, the town manager should appoint all members of multiple member bodies. Members shall be residents of the town at the time of appointment and throughout the term, unless otherwise approved by the council. Town manager shall establish a residence advisory committee to assist with evaluation and selection, and shall seek to appoint individuals with relevant expertise or experience to the committee that is being selected for. And the town manager shall establish policies and practices to encourage a diverse pool of applicants to multiple member bodies. So a lot of our principles apply here: checks and balances, diversity, accountability and inclusion, participation, all that sort of stuff, transparency. And I mean, the public has an interest in knowing who applies for town boards and committees. And if even town council members don't know who applied or how many applied, they can't really exercise their power to support or reject a nominee recommended by the town manager if they don't know who the other people in the pool were. And they also can't advocate for more diversity given if they don't know the demographics of the pool. So this is currently sort of all happening behind the curtain, if that makes any sense. And under council experience, recent experience with the pool of applicants for the school building committee, the council didn't know who was in the pool besides the person who the town manager ended up appointing. I know there were many other qualified candidates in that situation, and that was certainly a discussion. And also like term limits on these boards. The chair of the personnel board was reappointed after 12 years of service on the board without the town posting a notice of vacancy at all. So there wasn't really any ability for applicants who were interested. I mean, it'd be one thing if there were not any interested applicants, but we don't know if there were or not. So yeah. So for best practices, our neighbor Northampton asks applicants for town boards and committees to check a box on the application, agreeing that the application is public record and can't be shared. So applicants' names and applications can be accessed via a link online, and they consent to it with the clicking of that box. I'm not completely sure, but I believe some personal information like address and date of birth is redacted on that when people look at it. All right. So comments, questions, ideas. I will start people's 3 minutes if you raise your hand. Go ahead.
I fully support having the applicants known, and exactly for the reason you stated. How do you know if you have a diverse pool if you don't know who is in the pool? And that is very, very critical when we believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the idea of Northampton having people know that the names will be public record is really incredible. And yes, we all read in the paper about the school committee situation, and one, I think, was the zoning board last year. I mean, these are just terrible things that have been. I'm not going to comment on that. Anyway, thank you, but I do support that, and I will unraise my hand.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your comment. I should have mentioned that there was quite a fiasco around a zoning board appointment as well last year.
Yeah.
Next in line.
Martha?
Yeah, I guess I would just say that I would agree, and I agree in particular that there should be information made public about the number of candidates, their demographics, ethnicity, you know, all the things that one could. Now, was it your group that put the survey on the Amherst Indy? Because certainly last week there, you know, people were invited to fill out the survey on the Indy with these questions.
It wasn't us. I think it was an independent group to find out.
Are you going to get the results of it? Because it seemed like it was.
We'll look at them. I don't know. I don't recall who was doing it.
Yeah, because I think that would be
it's actually the Indy. I think it's the Indy itself is doing it.
So yeah. I think it would be interesting for this group to know the results from that survey too, as you try to put together your recommendations for our consensus meeting.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anita?
Hi. I had the experience of applying for an appointment on a town committee and went through the interview process. And I found, even though I was within the process, it felt very opaque. I think it could have been better explained. It was unsuccessful, and I'm not quibbling about who got the appointment at all. But it just felt like I didn't understand the criteria they were looking for. It was a four people were involved in the interview process, those who interviewed me. From what I understand, because I know someone who was in that group, it was split, but because it was a town manager who makes the appointment, he made the appointment. So I think even for those of us who want to apply, there needs to be a better description of the process and the criteria of what people are looking for, and also some kind of feedback. I never got any feedback. So I've been very reluctant since then to put my name in for any other committee in town. I found it very off-putting, is what I'm saying. I think Northampton's best practice, at least in terms of knowing the pool, and being able to determine not your competition, but who else is within this pool, and what do we know about them? We know a lot about our neighbors. So I think there are a lot of flaws in this process, that it could be better determined. And I don't know, I have no idea. And it's interesting that the charter says that there would be policies and practices of the town manager that controls this. And yet I'm completely unaware of any written policy that would have helped me better understand the process, and also help people who might be contemplating going into one of these committees, for them to decide whether it's something they want to submit themselves to.
Thank you. Martha?
Yes, I would agree with what Anita said. And
Josanna, you've had your hand up for a while. I don't want to call on Martha twice.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
I can go next. It's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I agree strongly that the name should be public, and a category I'd like to mention, or a criterion I'd like to particularly mention that should be included, is relevant experience and expertise. Because one of the things I've noticed, and I've also seen people comment on, is that people who have been chosen for some committees don't seem to have any relevant expertise in some cases, and in fact almost negative expertise, like choosing someone to lead the EPA who is a polluter themselves. So that would be something that I would like to see made public in particular. That's all.
Martha?
Yeah, okay. So following up on Anita's experience, then I would like to recommend feedback in the sense that when somebody has submitted an application, they get feedback confirming their application has been submitted, and the approximate dates, say, or the time schedule when things are going to be processed. And then again, at the time of the interviews, if you're selected for an interview, that you get some description of what's involved and what the criteria are and so on, and that then you get some feedback, so that when the town manager has made the decision and is going forward, the candidates who are not selected, at least get some nice, polite feedback saying, thank you for your application. I'm sorry you weren't selected or something, so that they know before the announcement becomes public. That's all.
Joan?
Just a quick question. I'm trying to think of a reason why somebody would care if their name wasn't made public. I mean, is there a reason why they keep the names in private? Is that because people might not put their names forward if they feel that they may not get the job? It seems like everyone is speaking to the fact that it should be public, and I agree with that. So I just was wondering if there's a reason that I'm not thinking about. Why would somebody care?
I can only speculate, but maybe someone has concern about address or racial or ethnic or income demographics, gender demographics, just a guess being put out, date of birth, etc. I'd imagine there's a way that that sort of thing could be redacted. I don't know per se, but I'm just speculating.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Agreed.
So are we ready to move on to the next question?
Yep.
All right.
Okay, this one is me again. So this question is, should the length of the town manager's contract be the same as the length of a council session? Or actually, more like, should each council have the opportunity to weigh in on a town manager's contract? So the relevant charter section actually says nothing about this issue. It just says the town manager shall receive such compensation for services as the town council shall determine, but such compensation shall be within the limits of available appropriations. And then there's a section of Massachusetts general legislation, which basically permits employment contracts. Says they have to follow the laws of the the laws of the charter. And just for reference, prior to the enactment of this current charter, around maybe 2006, the town meeting adopted or a procedure that said that the town manager's contract is for a period not to exceed 5 years and may be renewed for additional terms, not specifying how many terms or how long. Although they did at the time grandfather the existing town manager. So I'm not sure how much effect it had. Rationale. So if the town manager's contract extends beyond the term of the sitting council, that council has no power or leverage over him or her except for cases of malfeasance. So there's thus an imbalance of power. This might be more acceptable in a municipality with both a town manager and an elected mayor as executive, but when there's only a manager, this power as sole unelected executive is balanced only against the elected council, which is the legislative body. So, some background. This current town manager actually antedates the charter. He was brought in three years before the charter was put into place, and his first contract under the new council was an extension of the previous council, which was a contract which was about to expire right after the council came in for another 2 years. And then before the 2 years was up, in an executive session, the president of the town council proposed extending the contract for a further 2 years, which at that point added 2 years on to a contract that had 2 years to go. And at the time, 2 councilors expressed some concern about extending the term of the contract beyond the term of the council and tying the hands of the next council. But they voted to adopt the contract anyway. And most recently, last December, the council approved a further extension of the town manager's contract through August of 2027, which probably means past the next council, or almost. When are the next town elections?
Next year.
No, this year.
No, next year. We don't vote. You don't vote. That's a whole other question. I think it's next year. So yeah, so it's pretty much the entire span of the next council. Okay. So as we have said before, with a council manager form of government, there are fewer checks and balances between the legislative and executive branch. The power of the council over the unelected manager's contract is an example of a potential power of the legislator. And without it, the council has little leverage over the manager's actions. One possibility is if the contract was designed to terminate at the midpoint of each 2-year legislative session, the power would be more balanced and the yearly manager evaluations would be much more meaningful. And in addition, this would give each incoming council 1 year to find its feet and to figure out what they thought of the manager, and another year to make some changes. However, the question of how you'd actually make that happen, given the structure of when the terms currently expire, that might take a little bit of implementation to make it all come out the right way. That's it on that question.
Joan?
Just a question. Does this problem go away if we had staggered terms, which we had with the select board? It's something that's,
Sure.
I don't want to muddy this issue, but it seems to me like that's a piece of the problem here.
You're asking staggered terms of
the council.
Well, it depends on how long the terms are for.
Right.
Now, if
Right.
this current,
Yeah.
I mean, just got his contract extended for 4 years. So
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. I understand why they do not have it anymore, but I feel like there's a detriment to everybody coming in, no institutional knowledge being retained potentially.
That is a separate question altogether, but staggered terms is, something that is maybe beneficial for continuity in the council and for, not getting once, but we don't have that.
Right. So right now, the problem is that we want the town manager to be, we want the council to have some jurisdiction over any town manager.
Mm-hmm.
And
so, like, appointing
if there was
court justice right before the end of your presidency.
Right. So I just thought that if the town council was always changing, that would not be as much of an issue. But that's just I don't want to belabor this and take time away from the question. That's just what was bothering me.
It might be less. Do we even have staggered terms as one of our questions for later?
We do not.
We do not. And I think it's probably precluded by the rules. Well, the argument against staggered terms, I understand, is that elections are expensive and we couldn't afford it.
I do know that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it was cheaper to run elections for select board.
Other comments about the town manager, the length of his contract?
Yes.
Us?
Yes, I agree that the town council should have the opportunity to weigh in on the manager's contract. I don't remember that if there's an annual evaluation of the manager, wouldn't it make sense to consider and vote to extend the manager's contract after an evaluation of, if it's every alternate year? It seems that they've been extended every 2 years. So if that could be, more clearly designated that, after every 2 evaluations, there would be a session, there would be after the second every alternate evaluation, the council would weigh in on whether or not to extend the manager's contract.
Right. The question being, of course, which evaluation you would do it after. It's an annual evaluation.
Yeah. So I guess it would have to start at some point, and then it would be 2 years from then. But the other thing is that is it normal for the extensions to happen during executive sessions? And was there warning or notice given of them? Did these extensions, that the last two that were voted, that were given to the contract, were they given following an evaluation? And there was notice given that this would be discussed and this would be voted on in advance so the public knew?
I could answer that. I could only answer it from the perspective of when I was a counselor, but yes, they are the contract discussion and extension is done in conjunction with the evaluation or after it. The one time that I was involved, there was no prior notice that the issue of contract extension was going to come up in the executive session. So it's actually kind of difficult because the town manager is there in the executive session and leaves for the vote, but it's still a very tricky issue, you know, especially when it comes without notice. So it's difficult to vote against a contract extension. So just saying.
I've just a last question. I mean, is there any precedent in the state for those votes to be anonymous? I suppose it's against. I mean, I know that I worked for the state at a university, and when we evaluated our department head, and when we voted on our department head, we did it anonymously after having an open discussion, so that vulnerable people would not be targeted later. And I don't know. Anyway, that's a different issue. But I do support this.
Oh, that's a good point. I don't know. I think that
there's a recorded vote, but the
councilors are elected. I think there's an argument to be made by the public that they want to know how their councilor voted, and but I can also see the opposite. That it's very, very difficult to vote against.
The discussions in executive session are obviously not public, but I believe that the vote is recorded and then it's also confirmed in a public session.
They publish executive session minutes. Yes.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
It can be multiple months later, though,
or years. So the minutes of the 2021 executive session vote are indeed available on the town website. The minutes of the 2023 public session are not yet available on the website.
So any other comments on this topic? I don't see everybody here.
Nope, I see everybody. There's not.
Okay. Let's see what we got here.
Oh.
That's you again, Janet.
Well, I had 3 of the 6 questions, so they got to come sometime or another. They're going to get real tired of me. Okay. Should the town manager's evaluation be conducted by an independent third party? And I think we're way ahead of time.
Yeah, that's okay.
Good. Okay, the relevant charter section is just the town council shall conduct an annual review for the purpose of assessing the town manager's performance. And I can say that at one stage in the charter discussions, it was a little bit more specific about what had to be involved in this evaluation, but it never said anything about, an independent evaluator. Oh, and the league principles: participation, openness, honesty, and non-corruptibility, and accountability. So an independent third party would not be constrained by the need to maintain a close working relationship with the town manager and might be able to offer more objective analysis of the manager's performance. So the council evaluates the manager yearly. I believe that's in the charter. It's an annual review. The process includes individual counselor evaluations, staff evaluations, and public evaluations, which are open-ended questions. The council president drafts the compilation menu and a composite evaluation and cover letter. And during the most recent town manager evaluation, which apparently you knew if you were there or if you watched the video, but the minutes are not out, the council president received some criticism because the draft evaluation did not fully reflect the diversity of views and the range of comments among the town councilors. The final evaluation was amended to include contrasting perspectives from some council members. So, best practices. There is an article which is linked here, and it's from organization that has some expertise in these issues. An annual performance evaluation process could be easier, more useful, and helpful for everyone involved, where the appointee receives specific feedback and clear goals. And this is called a facilitated evaluation. A third party manages the evaluation process, acts as a neutral party to gather data from elected officials and sometimes from the managers or appointees' colleagues, analyzes the data, and presents the findings to the manager in a way that encourages growth. However, this facilitator does not work for free, so that would have to be budgeted for. And this is from an internet, it's a group that specializes in city manager evaluations. So that's it on that particular.
Any questions or comments on this? Whether we should have whether there should be some kind of either third-party evaluation or some kind of facilitated evaluation, so that maybe some committee of the council would do it, but that it would be facilitated. Thoughts?
Anita?
Yeah, I think the idea of cost can't be ignored. And I'm wondering if this is somewhat related to the contract term. And whether there might be some combination of an in-house annual review, but particularly where a contract is coming closer to renewal, that it would be important to have an independent third party. It also makes a difference, I think, of how that independent third party would be used and how directly they would be involved in gathering the data, or are they creating the tool and doing some sort of compilation. I think there are a lot of gradations of how one uses a third party to do these things. It certainly supports a more objective way of gathering and particularly interpreting data and creating a tool that will get you where you want to go. I mean, sometimes the answer is begged by the question. So I think it is worth contemplating how and when to use an independent third party and how this relates to the contract term.
Very helpful. Martha? Oh, unmute.
Sorry, I like Anita's suggestion there that a third party review is not something one would do annually, but when the contract is coming up for renewal, that might be a good sort of reason or justification to do a third-party review. It would still be the town council then that had to, make the decisions, and the review would go to the town council as well as to the manager then. But that might be something that was worth a suggestion from this group.
Dasna.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. So I just third that.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, one of the things, I'm throwing in a comment of my own here. One of the things that has been a little frustrating is the sort of inaccessibility of the process to the public, or seeming inaccessibility, in that they haven't gotten any kind of rating form or way to evaluate the town manager that's easy to use. So this is not right on topic. So are you, do we have any other comments? Okay, those are very helpful. Good ideas. So this is, again, this is just as part of our process to try to come up with recommendations. Wait a minute here. Okay, Marla, you're on.
Okay, so question 5. Should the charter include an elected executive? And Darcy, if you can please show the next slide. The relevant charter section is 1.3, division of powers, which states that all legislative powers of the town shall be exercised by a town council. The administration of all town fiscal, prudential, and municipal affairs shall be vested in the executive branch headed by the town manager. The rationale for possible amendment, it's connected to the league principles of checks and balances, accountability, and public participation. The Amherst Charter Commission, several years ago, they weighed both the council mayor and the council manager options as forms of government for Amherst. And they initially advocated for the council mayor form. In an essay written at that time, Mandy Jo Henneke, who was a commissioner, wrote that unlike a mayor, a manager is not accountable to the voters. The manager reports to the council, not the voters. The voters cannot vote him out and can only affect change by voting out councilors who may or may not seek to terminate or not review a manager's contract. There are 351 municipalities in Massachusetts. They include 50 cities or municipalities with small legislative bodies, such as a council or select board, plus a chief executive who's either elected a mayor or appointed a town manager. There are 12 with appointed managers besides Amherst. I should say besides and not including. All right, the next one. In practice, the town manager appears to have more influence over decision-making in Amherst than the elected town council through his development of the budget and control over the recruitment and appointment processes. Best practices in the mayor-council form of government, voters directly elect both the mayor and the council, and the mayor is the chief executive who appoints key officials. The mayor, according to the Massachusetts Municipal Association, prepares a budget, approves contracts, negotiates with unions, and oversees administration. The elected council is clearly the legislative body, votes on and adopts budgets and laws, and approves debt. In the manager-council form, a manager performs most of the same functions above, but is appointed by the council rather than elected by the voters. Under this structure, the manager cannot be removed except by the council. Moreover, the manager and council effectively function as a single unit with potential blurring of the distinction between the executive and legislative functions of local government. Does anyone have thoughts or comments or questions?
Anita.
This one really presses my button. I think it is really a misnomer to call a town manager who is hired under a contract by the town council to purport to call that person an executive branch, because that implies a check and balance that simply is non-existent. I think the biggest flaw of many in the charter is the concentration of power, and particularly the concentration of power in the town manager. And if there is any energy to rethink that fundamental question, I hope that it's taken on squarely and discussed, because this is unworkable. And as I said, the concentration of power, both in the council to control, the majority of the council to control things, and through the town manager, who they select and appoint and evaluate. So yes, I'm a YES to this.
Dasna?
I second Anita. I think it was helpful to see the number of small municipalities who have our system versus the number who have a elected mayor and a town council. And I mean, I think we're already an anomaly in that we are such a small town that has taken on the structure of a city, so that now we're like a city called the town of Amherst or something. And I wonder whether the committee could, whether there's an argument to be made that this is particularly problematic, this structure, given that we're such a small town. I wonder whether that, that not only, I don't know, I just wondered if that's something to consider. I haven't thought about it, but it's just, we're already in such a minority in the state. And it just seems to be doubly undemocratic when we're this small, to have no recourse, over the town manager. So I think that we should go ahead and propose this, but maybe look into the question of size and scale, and whether other towns may have also brought in, other towns in choosing this form of government may have made the decision to go with mayor and come up with reasons why they made that decision instead of having a town manager. And maybe that would be a place to look. That's all.
Joan. Oh, you're muted, Joan.
Just say, I agreed with everything Anita said. The checks and balances are my serious problem with this charter. And I question, though, can the change to a manager, a mayor form, is that something that's within the purview of a charter review commission? That seems like throwing out the charter and coming up with a whole new charter.
Marla, do you want to answer that?
So I'll answer as best I can. The law is not completely clear about what you can and cannot change through the various mechanisms, but there are several different mechanisms, including special acts of the legislature, for the town to adopt a mayoral form of government would be a change to the elected body or bodies, it would be to add a new elected official. And so it would be significant. And it might be that a change such as that would require a finding by an elected charter commission. That said, other towns have, gone back to the drawing board in part, with new charter commissions to make substantive changes. So it's not something that cannot be done. It could potentially be a time-consuming process. But the home rule amendment, it does give towns a fair amount of leeway to make changes. And we are trying to find out more about which changes would require which process and how long they would take. And so that is something that hopefully we'll be able to answer in more detail going forward.
Yeah, and one I would just add to that the official charter review committee cannot put forward certain things are not within its scope to recommend, but they're not outside their scope to review and to make plans to do something further that's needed. As Marla suggested, it would require either a new charter commission or an act of the legislature. Those are the two paths. So, and this committee has more freedom than the town committee. So we can, and our standard are the good government principles. So if we see that something is needed in view of our good government principles, there's nothing really to prevent us from at least mentioning it or commenting on it or recommending that the town at least look at it to decide whether they want to move on it any further than what the official committee can do. So yeah, someone else had her hand up. Is that you, Martha?
Yeah, if there's no one else waiting. Yeah, I mean, I see two specific problems that I see with the town manager form of government. And one is that his control over the budget. I mean, it used to be with town meeting and the town meeting's finance committee that they made some of the decisions. And now, if I understand correctly, and you can correct me on this, it's a state law that once our town manager submits his final budget to the council cannot raise any number. They can lower a number, but not make an increase. And so that's a challenge. It means the council really doesn't have much control in the end. They gave recommendations back in December, I guess, or January, but they don't make the decisions of the priorities. And, your budget shows your town's values and priorities. So, that's not under control. And the other thing I see is communication with the community. I mean, our town manager's only obligation really is to communicate with the council rather than with the community. I mean, he may set up, the informal cup of joes and that kind of thing. But the example of the police chief selection coming up, because it's gotten down to two candidates, it is quite a controversial decision in the sense of it's either, someone who's already part of our police department or somebody who's an outsider. It's an either or kind of choice that a lot of people have strong opinions on. And yet our town manager doesn't really have to address the community when he makes his decision. He only has to justify his decision to the council. And that seems, that's one big difference between a mayor and a town manager is the relation with the larger community. That's my 2 cents there.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Okay, are we ready to move on? Okay, this is mine. Should the town elections be held in even-numbered years to coincide with national elections? So our charter says that the regular town election should be held on the first Tuesday following the first Monday in November in each odd-numbered year. And those are the off years. They're the years when we don't have state and national elections. So a rationale for possibly amending this is that the League of Women Voters position is to increase public participation and voter turnout, and voting in even-numbered years is shown to double participation. There has been the council experience on this page is basically letting you know about updated information about what's happening with this issue. The Charter Commission basically didn't move forward with doing this because they thought it was not within their power to do it. There's growing interest across the state in changing this. And there was an article in the Globe in November that focused on this, which basically stated moving to even year elections is doable. In Massachusetts, municipal election dates are set by each city's charter. Many local officials, this is the important sentence here, many local officials operate under a misperception that this arrangement cannot be altered. However, election timing can be changed with legislative approval. Massachusetts cities should undertake this process, and the legislature should approve these efforts. So the legislature could also facilitate this by amending the law for the whole state. But they're basically saying you can do it through a charter effort, similar to our ranked choice voting, where we would seek to do it and get a state legislation that would okay the town of Amherst to do it. Now, there was also a recent article in the Indy that spoke about it and got some comments on it. Mandy Jo Henneke, who was a former charter commissioner and is a current counselor, commented on it, and she basically confirmed why the Charter Commission didn't do it, and her opinion differs from the opinion that was stated in the Globe, and that she thinks that at the time, at least, it was not possible to do it. So I guess we want to look at this, because if our voter turnout can be doubled, clearly that is what our goal would be. And so we just added some new information about this today. Thank you, Marla. And in New York State, a bill enacted by the governor and the state legislature in the most recent December will increase voter turnout by moving many county and local elections to even-numbered years, aligning them with federal, state, and statewide and state legislature elections. Research supports this, and she cites an article in the New York Times. A report from the Manhattan Institute found that changing local elections to coincide with national elections led to more accountable and responsible government and saved taxpayers money. And lastly, a 2005 study found that moving local elections to even-numbered years increased Black turnout, and that consolidating elections could make easier for working-class voters and those living in poverty to participate in elections. So, any thoughts about this? Looks like Phyllis.
I fully support going to the even years. I was a poll worker at the Lutheran Church last fall. We had one person in 1 hour. Now, I got paid to do this. That was okay. We chatted, one person knit, but really increasing participation is critical because we as women, we as League of Women Voters do believe in active citizen participation. And if they don't come to the elections, I mean, that's one of the basics. Vote is our name. So yes, even. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Martha.
Hi. Well, I'll play devil's advocate. Okay. I'll say if we have our council elections in the even years along with national elections, yes, there's bigger turnout, but does that really mean that more people are paying attention to the local candidates? Or is it just kind of swept under with the interest in national elections? I mean, here in Amherst, one of the big challenges is we have a very large student population. And if they vote, they're more likely to be voting because of, national or maybe state elections, but certainly not necessarily local elections. So the one advantage I can see, even if there's a smaller turnout in the odd years, is that the people who come out to vote are the ones who have really learned about the local issues and the local candidates. So I just toss that out to think about.
Okay, Jasna.
Yes, well, I feel strongly that if at all it's possible legislatively, I mean that if it truly is now possible, we should propose it. We should recommend going to even years. And I too was trying to think of a reason why it might be a problem. The only thing I could think of is that it gives us townspeople maybe less energy and time on our hands to campaign. And given that there are these funded PACs who are campaigning to put councillors in, there's a disadvantage already for ordinary people to campaign for independent candidates in council. So that would be my only worry, that it would take away, people will be working for their national candidate. And but I think that the numbers outweigh. I think that by and large, it's if we can at all do it, even years would be much better.
Anita.
I think there are a lot of advantages to going to even numbered years. And I think in some ways, paying attention to a national election, state elections, your eye goes to down ballot, and why are these names here? What should I know about these people? I think it's more of an opportunity for education and outreach and understanding of how does municipal government fit with my sense of the state government. There are links here that we tend to ignore because we've siloed them over into odd years. And I think I really appreciate the increase in participation. And I think it's not just participation, but knowledgeable participation that we probably have a better shot at on if you're packaging them, even though our municipal elections are supposed to be nonpartisan. And it complicates, you're thinking on things sometimes, but I see more advantages than disadvantages. And I do hope this happens and that people work on it and find the legal path, use the legal paths that are available.
Thank you. Other comments? And I think we're at the end of our questions. We have, I hope you can come to the third discussion also, because this is great feedback. And if you think of other comments, you can send them to, this is Julian's email. And he's collecting them, and we're going to add them to our list of comments that we'll look at when we're, formulating our recommendations. So, and if you have any other just general comments, that would be great. We really, really appreciate your coming, and I'm glad it was a rainy afternoon so you didn't miss a sunny one.
Thank you so much for all this work. It's really appreciated.
Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you all for your insights.
And
we really appreciate it.
Marla, don't forget to turn off the recording.
I will do that right now.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time and effort. Much appreciated.